Welcome, everyone. Welcome to a new series that I am launching. And this series is a very special series called Expert Interviews with Ken. This is a series where I basically interview other people who are experts in their own fields, whatever their profession is, and we get a chance to hear their story and what it is they're doing for people. So with that, let's dive into today's guest on Expert Interviews with Ken. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Expert Interviews with Ken. And for today's episode, I have a very special guest, and it is Kaleigh Rogers. And with over a decade of experience, trauma expert, Kaleigh Rogers has been on the front lines of Americans' mental health crisis, tackling drug abuse, suicide prevention, and trauma recovery. Her expertise spans domestic violence shelters, homeless shelters, addiction recovery, youth residential treatment centers, and other unique therapies. With moxie and passion, Kaleigh, a nationally certified traumatic stress expert, dramatic orator, brings both frontline work and personal experience with complex post-traumatic stress disorder to audiences around the world. She has spoken to hundreds of therapists, marketplace ministry, and at international expos for suicide prevention and trauma treatment. She has been committed to serving the underserved, and as a lead in a local nonprofit, ensures that individuals facing financial hardships or disabilities receive the care that they deserve. That is quite a list of credentials. I mean, I was kind of fumbling my way through that, but wow. So let's start with this question, Kaleigh. How long have you been doing this? Because that is quite a list of accomplishments.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Ken.
You're welcome.
Ever since I was born, I've just had certain ways about me. But professionally, I've been in the field over 10 years. Again, started in some really intense places and have continued through and still serving on the front lines.
That's just amazing.
Yeah.
So let's dive into some of the actual things that you actually do. So you dive into domestic violence, you work with homeless shelters, you've got addiction recovery, youth residential treatment centers, and what's this kind of therapy that you have going on here? Unique?
Yeah. There's so much that goes into it only because, my career spanned a lot of places. There's a common theme though. Every place that I've been in, it's been underserved communities or it's been communities that have high exposure to trauma,
Mhm.
violence, abuse, neglect, impoverishment, mental illness, incarceration, all of these things. And on the high ends of that. So it tends to be individuals not with a single incident of trauma, like a car accident or one assault, but have multiple decades worth sometimes of experience with trauma. But these days, how I treat trauma is a little bit different than how I started, to be honest. I learned in the fields. A lot of what I learned wasn't taught in school. And I would sit in front of a hurting soul and I'd recognize that just talking our way through it didn't hit the injury that is post-traumatic stress disorder.
Mm.
And so I just kept walking and kept learning and kept experimenting and getting trained in all kinds of modalities. And then horses fell into my lap. So that's a big part of what I do as well as what's called thought-filled therapy. And I'm happy to talk more about each if that's helpful.
Yeah, that would be helpful. So you're not just handling like the surface trauma. We're not just necessarily talking about trauma of like car accidents or different things like that. I'm getting the sense that we're talking about much deeper trauma, like
Yes.
childhood trauma, things that people grew up with, and different things like that, correct?
Yes, most of the people that come to see me, they aren't sure who they are. They don't know if anybody is trustworthy, and they're pretty terrified. They navigate life as best they can, but there's a lot of fear and there's a lot of actual pain in their mind, their body, their soul, and they don't really know what to do with it or what the path forward is. Yeah, deep stuff.
So how do you help people like work through that? I mean, I know because I know with my own childhood, I was never close to my father. As actually when I became a Christian is when things really started to decline with how I thought about my father. It's almost like the veils were lifted from my eyes and I saw him for who he was. He was the kind of person that was pretty much do as I say, not as I do. And after I became a Christian, I realized how much of a horrible example that was. And then as I got older in my own Christianity and in my own walk and in my own life, slowly but surely, I just completely ended up like detaching myself from all things that had to do with him and what I thought about him.
Yeah.
So, is that the kind of trauma you're talking about, or is it much deeper than that? Or, let's dive into like the different aspects and the different angles that you hit with those kind of traumas.
Yeah, to answer your question, absolutely, yes. The depth of your experience that you're sharing is certainly where I go almost every day with the people that I serve. And trauma knows no face. So sometimes this is men, sometimes this is women, sometimes it's teenagers, it's little kids, it's people in their 60s, and it's every race and every background. But certainly, yes, I have some people that have experienced natural disaster trauma where they've lost over 80 people due to natural disaster, or people who have had their children pass away due to suicide or violence, drug abuse and overdose and suicide. Those are things that are on the cusp of what I do every week. But that's also the reality in our country. Sometimes we're going about our daily life that we don't recognize that there is a genuine like fire in our country with mental health. In 2022 alone, we saw the highest rates of suicide on record ever. And of course, we always know that those numbers are higher. So to answer that first question, yes, that level of depth and more. And when I meet with people, we don't compare traumas necessarily. For some people, 5 years worth of sexual abuse is just as impacting as someone that spent 20 years with no one that they can connect with
Hmm.
because of neglect or emotional abuse. So everybody responds a little bit differently and in common ways. And then how do we actually work with people with trauma was
Mm-hmm.
more of your like, how do I do that? Primary is it's got to be a safe space as best as possible. It's less about what I say and more about the environment is safe enough for them to go where they naturally need. And I have found in the therapy field, unfortunately, we're taught to go at it with skills and go at it with objectives. And that's good to have a plan in mind. Like
It
we need
is.
to have some kind of pathway and an end goal. But if we don't make space and room for the natural inside of a person to come up and bubble up, we miss it. We miss certain things. A good example would be if I came in, I was like, all right, Susie, here's your 10 coping skills. Let's practice how you're going to approach your family members. Let's do it. I mean, that could help in some regards. But really, what Susie needed was safe space to talk about what happened when she was 9.
Mm.
And that's changed how she views herself the whole rest of her life. And so if we allow that to come to the surface, then, like you said, that veil's lifted and we can do some real healing work. So we shine a light, we shine his light really on
Right.
what's actually happening. Because so many people are walking in the darkness and stumbling and falling and ending their life, and they don't know where to turn or what to do. So with God involved in a safe way, I usually call myself like a rebel for Jesus. I follow Jesus. I don't subscribe to organized religion. I do attend a loving church with jeans and a t-shirt,
Love
and
it.
I'm in the Word every day. So
Love it.
that's the Jesus that we invite into the room. But I guess I should also clarify, I work with everyone. So believers, non-believers, people that are somewhere in the middle, everybody's hurting. And I don't use the therapy space as an evangelizing space because therapy is sacred. It's got to be totally protected. But now that I'm not in corporate healthcare, we can welcome that in more easily.
Love
And
that.
it is a beautiful thing, Ken.
Yeah, I love that. And, just to further clarify what you were saying about the faith-based part of it. So,
Yeah,
I mean, I love the fact that what you do is faith-based. I mean, I know my own brand. One of the things that I stole from my coach is a statement that she always says is, I am unapologetically faith-based.
yeah,
And that's exactly what it's about. And to bring more clarity upon that is, so, yes, I totally 100% agree with you. It's not a religion. And, there's a couple people that I worked with, and one that I still currently work with, not as a client. Um, she's got a bad taste in her mouth with Christianity. And there was one particular time where we were on a Zoom call together doing an interview together, and I had to kind of step back and go, okay, no, I need to address this issue here because the Christianity that you saw and that turned you off is not Christianity.
yes,
She saw the Christianity that was more of the religion Christianity. And she saw the Christianity that was more the person standing on the corner going, if you don't accept Christ, you're going to hell, and that's not the true gospel. That's not Christianity. She also saw the Christianity that was more concerned with financial issues, offering baskets. That's the classic one. Um And so I had to correct her. I'm like, that's not Christianity. I had to stand up and I had to say, yeah, I had to apologize and say, I'm sorry for those that have given that kind of representation
yeah,
to you. Here's the true gospel. Here's the truth of the matter.
yeah,
Here is what it is. Christianity is a relationship with Christ, it is not a religion. The other
yeah,
thing that has been more clear to me today, more so than ever, is it's just interesting how Christianity is the one, in this case, I'm going to use the word religion. Christianity is the one religion that is attacked worldwide the most. For example, the most recent Super Bowl that happened, what was up with that big giant, I'm just going to say the word shit show that they produce, for their act and everything else? It was a direct attack on Christianity. But why Christianity? That's the question I need to ask here. Why Christianity there? Now, I don't mean to get off topic here, but you kind of hit a little bit of a
yeah.
hot
I can
spot there.
speak to that.
Yeah. Um, why was Christianity attacked? Why wasn't Jews attacked? Why wasn't it about Muslims? Why wasn't it about any of them? Mormons, Catholics? Why was it Christianity?
Yeah,
Why
yeah.
is
There's an
that
agenda.
always? Yeah, exactly. Why is that always attacked? And the point that I'm making here is there's something to that. There must be something to Christianity. For those of you who are listening to this, who may not be Christians, maybe you're on the edge, maybe you're curious, there must be something to Christianity to make it to where we're always the ones that are being attacked. And so it's just something to think about, guys. Why is it always Christianity gets attacked? Why not anybody else? It's just something I want you to really think critically on and take into consideration on that. And so, yeah, relationship with Christ. It is 100% about a relationship with Christ. Now, I am curious, how do you bring the gospel in a very loving way and in a very safe way to people? How do you communicate that with people? How do you bring that hope? How do you bring that peace to them? I mean, I'm guessing it's not as easy as just bringing scripture and just, bringing that. So, how do you set that atmosphere and that environment for them?
Yeah. Oh, such a good question. Do you want to know the secret? Which I mean isn't really a secret, but like
Well,
I
sure.
actually love them. Like I genuinely love the people that come to see me. And there's all kinds of different types of love. Some people are like, "Oh my God, you love them." Yeah, I love them. There's a thing called unconditional love, agape, as it talks about in
Mm,
scripture that we see the inherent value in another person. So immediately I come from a place that in my spirit isn't threatening, isn't harmful. I actually care about how they feel. I care about what they need. I care about how this is going to be for them. And so coming in with that, there's already this energetic setting the stage of the space. Like I don't have to think about it. That's just how I'm built
Mm.
because I told Jesus a long time ago, Lord, do whatever you want with me. Help
Yeah.
me see people, help me love people. You're saying see people with clear, loving eyes. I want to do that. So it's a gift from him to be able to actually see people that way. And I work with a lot of people that have made decisions in the past or even currently that harm other people. Like they've been violent towards others, they have a background in prison, they have an addiction history, but I see them through the eyes of they inherently matter. And I also understand how all those things happen, the roots of trauma. Um,
Hmm.
to get back to sharing the gospel, you know, what I find that isn't always spoken on, people will say, Kaleigh, I feel good around you. I feel safe around you. Like I just shared like the biggest thing with you and I like it's been 5 minutes. And that kind of happens wherever I go, to be honest, which I expect now. It's just again how I'm built. But it's the Holy Spirit that comforts people and people think it's me. They're like, oh my God, Kaleigh. And I'm like, it's not me. It's the Holy Spirit, the comforter. I've welcomed him into me and he dwells with me. And so wherever I go, when people feel truly loved, it's because of him. So it's been a fine balance because in the therapy world, people will look towards their therapist as the expert, as the solution giver, as the healer, even the savior, even. And I'm none of those things. I'm none of those things because ultimately I'm actually going to die. Like I'm
Right.
not going to be here every day for good. But if someone is connected to the well that never runs dry, to an entity that is more powerful than anything, and that they can in a second be right there with God, that's the best thing I can do. So sometimes it's very subtle where we don't even speak about God. And for others where they may already identify in some sort of faith or they're curious about faith, I take the cue with where they are. So if they're in a place where they're like, Kaleigh, I see God is love. I'm believing that, but how could he love me? Like, I just don't understand. Trauma, actually, one of the first things it does is it robs people's identity and they see themselves in a shameful way. Like, I'm bad. Not what I do is bad. Like, I'm inherently bad. And if we inherently think we're bad, well, there's nothing we can do about it, right? It's like a
Hmm.
cake that's broken. You got to toss it out. And a lot of people walk around in the world thinking they're just trash and they should be tossed out. And so we then get in the word and the truth. And so again, it's less about what I say and more about, okay, what is God actually revealing? So we may pray, we may not pray. It depends on the person. And then we go to the word and we say, okay, well, what does God have to say about that? What does he have to say about you? And oh
Mm.
my goodness, he shares so much to people, so much to people. So it's the ingredient of love. It's setting an environment that's actually safe for the real stuff to come to the surface. I do have some legitimate trauma training. So when that comes up, I know as guided by him in my training where to go from there.
Mm.
Is it a body-based thing that we need? Is their body just in such a tense state that there's actually something we need to do to release that some so that now emotions can be accessed and we can honor them and we can explore them, but not be totally hijacked by them? Is it
Right.
how they are showing up in their relationships? And then we start to tease that apart. Well, why do you do this? Like, let's understand. And is there another way? And if there is, well, do we even want to try it? And why may we not or yes? So that's a little bit, I mean, there's so much more I can delve deep on that, but uh, you have such a great question.
I love all of that, and so there's just a couple of things that popped out at me. So, what's interesting is with you saying love the people that you love the people. What's interesting, and I actually wrote it out on a post-it note. My coach the other day was praying and I send messages. We do audio message back and forth pretty much every day through an app called Voxer. And we were having a discussion the other day, I think it was 2 days ago. And she was sharing with me that she was praying that morning. And one of the things that she feels like God was putting on her heart was for me to love the people that he is sending me more than the information that I'm going to give them.
Yes.
And I got to thinking about that. I was just like, oh, wow, what a powerful reminder. Because it is so easy for me to love the information that I'm giving them. And I mean, because it is helpful, it is, empowering. It is extremely deep, especially when it comes to my boot camp that I have running right now. It's a very intensive, extensive boot camp. And there is a lot of information that's being flown at the clients that come through my boot camp. So much
Yes.
so, one of the people that came through my boot camp, co-host to another show that I do, she got to the point to where she sat there and her eyes were actually tearing up. She's like, I cannot believe the deception of this industry has gone so far and it's so deep. And it hit her, and for me, I mean, it sounds weird, but that's exciting to me when a person gets to that place because then in that place, they find empowerment. They
Yes.
find the ability to get their power back and to be able to make wiser choices around their food. It's really easy to get caught up, because of that. So I saw my co-host start to tear up midway through my boot camp, and she just became overwhelmed, and she was like, I cannot believe the how deep the deception and lies of this industry is, and I cannot believe how far this goes. But and I actually love it when people get to that point because it's at that point that they then become empowered. It's at that point that they then achieve their power back that's been taken from them from so many years from the industry. And
Yes.
it's so back to the point that I'm trying to make here. It's so easy for me to fall in love with that.
Yeah.
And that's not a bad thing. I mean, I
Right.
love the information I'm giving because I know it's so empowering. I know
Yeah.
it's so powerful. You and I had a conversation on our pre-show interview, just kind of like in the depthness of that. It's easy for me to just, I'm so passionate about that. And I know you saw that passion when we were on that call. It's easy for me to love the information. And so to hear that from my coach, remember to love the people more than the information I'm giving, was just such a freaking powerful reminder.
I love what you said because that's exactly what we do, Ken. We reveal the truth in our prospective industries. It's been revealed to us. You see the agenda in your industry. You see how it's hurt people and continues to hurt people. And so that's like you are given a passion for that.
Mhm.
And that is something to love. And for me, like, oh my gosh, horses and nature and God, like all of these things, I enjoy them so much. And I'm like, yes, I'm so eager to share. And it can just be dissemination of information. I think it's very similar to like the gospel, right? Like we can sit and just read the gospel or we can share the gospel, but it's different when people can connect with God with their soul as opposed to just their mind, because God calls us to more. He calls us to think well and to know the truth, but he calls us to an actual relationship, like a real relationship. And some
Yes.
people are like, well, how do I have a relationship with you? Talk to them, you listen and communicate back and forth, you sit in presence of, you feel the feelings of, you care about what they care about. You know what Jesus stands for is what I stand for: goodness and peace and love and kindness and connection, like all of those things, all of those things. So I love that we shine a light on some very real problems that we're passionate about,
Yes.
but at the core it's got to be because of the people that we're sharing it with.
Yes.
Yeah.
100%. And the second
Yeah.
thing that I wanted to touch on in regards to all of that, so powerful. Love the people more than you love, more than the information. It's still hitting me. And that's why I
Yeah.
wrote it down on a sticky note. And I'm looking over here at my wall because it's just like I wanted that to be a reminder for me. But the
Yes.
second thing is I think it's so powerful how you shared, how you open up the word and you're just like, okay, here is, here's what God says about you. Here's what
Yeah.
God says about this. And I think that's so powerful because I think so many people in that kind of a situation, trauma, whatever it is, family trauma, serious injury trauma, accident trauma, losing people trauma. I mean, there's so many different types of trauma. It's so easy to get wrapped up in a mindset that literally is damning of yourself. Oh my gosh, God must be thinking this of me. Oh my gosh, why is God allowing this to happen to me? What did I ever do? Um, those are some of the most common things. And I mean, I even see people today, they may not have trauma issues, but I see a lot of people today struggle with those kind of things. Why is God bringing this my way? Why do I even deserve this? And it's just so encouraging that you bring them to the word and go, here's what God truly says, because it
Yes.
unravels everything that the enemy has twisted on them, the same way the
Yeah.
enemy in the Garden of Eden twisted God's words with Eve to deceive Eve to get her to eat the fruit.
Yes.
So he commonly does with us, and more so with people that are experiencing deep damaging trauma. It's messing with their heads, and the enemy is playing on that
Yeah.
playfield, playing on that playground, and literally adding to the twisted messages and
Yeah.
making them think, and so the fact that you're opening up the word and you are showing them where their identity really lies, who
Yeah.
their identity really lies in, I think is very, very powerful. Because when you start diving into your identity and where it's
Yeah.
really placed in God and in Christ, there is so many powerful encouragements that are in there. So much.
I There's so much I want to say on this subject.
So
One, okay,
say,
let's
so
talk about the
go.
garden. I know, right? But like, okay, so Satan, he came in and he said a half lie. He said to Eve, because Eve goes, "No, God said," and then he goes, "Did God really say that?"
Hmm.
And then he inserted, "He's just trying to keep you from seeing," which, like, yeah, when they ate the fruit, like it uncovered their nakedness. They could see good from evil, whereas before they were covered. They didn't have this, oh no, like now I can see and now I can choose, and like all the consequences that come from that. So he very insidiously will give half lies first, and he'll say, God didn't really say that, or
Hmm.
this isn't really what he meant. And it's a big passion of mine to increase Bible literacy. So it's really being able to get in the word and understand the word. I can't tell you in particular how many women, men, they go, yeah, the Bible's kind of intimidating, or I don't know, I've heard some things, I don't know what this means. And so, what would it be to arm people with the ability to think clearly enough, to be in their spirit, to open the word to anything and have the Holy Spirit guide them to understand and then
Hmm.
apply whatever that is? It's literally like our weapon for the enemy. Like, people don't get it twisted. You and I, we have an actual enemy, and he doesn't have our best interest in mind. He doesn't want us to be connected in love. He doesn't want us to thrive in what our gifts are. If anything, he wants it all buried so that he can steal us away, because he's jealous of the power of the Father, because he's so hijacked by pride. He's
Yeah.
so hijacked by pride. We have an enemy.
He is, and he's good at being the deceiver. Something else interesting that actually, again, my coach pointed out to me a couple weeks ago, and I was like, oh, that's a good point. You know what's interesting, and I never thought about it until now, until like she made this point, is both times. So in the Garden of Eden and when Jesus was fasting for 40 days,
Yeah.
both times, the very first thing that the enemy tempted them with was food.
Yes.
Very
Yep.
interesting. Very
Yeah.
interesting correlation, especially with the lies of the industry, the
Yeah.
deceptions of the industry. That was very interesting. And until she brought that across my path, I was like, I never thought about that. I'm like, oh my gosh. From the
Yeah.
very beginning, it's the food that they tempt that we've been tempted with. Oh my gosh. So
Yep.
the enemy twists, turns, tells half truths and different things like that. And I can only imagine the people that you work with. I can only imagine the deception that the industry is, or not the deception that the enemy
Yes.
is bringing inside their head. I can only
Yes.
imagine because I know, even with my walk and my, growth that's been really accelerated over the last 9 months to a year. There's a whole story behind that.
Mhm.
But I know even in that, like I have sat back and watched the enemy twist things in my own head
Yes.
and cool thing about it is over the last month to the last year, especially working with my faith-based coach, a little tongue-tied there. Um I've watched my relationship with Christ, my relationship with God just grow so much deeper and closer. And especially since about 9 months to a year ago, I was seeking and asking God, how do I make you more part of my brand? How do I make you more part of my company? And it's like, boom, I've watched everything just like blossom. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I have watched the enemy come in and just try to rock my world, try to deceive me
Yes.
into different things and everything's like that. So, I mean, I know the enemy does that with me, but I can only imagine the level that he does that to with the people that you speak to
Wow.
and people you see. I can
It's
only imagine.
unreal. It's unreal because it's a real battleground for them. And sometimes it's so close to the edge where they're teetering on the it's so painful. I don't know how I can take one more breath. It's so severe. And it's this back and forth of, is this the truth or is that the truth? Is this the truth of me or is this the truth of me? And when there's all of this confusion and high emotional charge, sometimes it feels like people are going into madness
Hmm.
and they go, I'm totally losing it. I don't know how to even get a grasp on what's real and what's not real. And so we see that on the very far end with psychotic disorders, but we also see that in everyday people going, I don't know what's up and down and left and right. I don't know me or you or what I'm going to do. I don't know. And so sometimes that looks like being paralyzed, agoraphobia. They're in their homes. They are too terrified to leave. Even if they want to go to a certain environment, say they want to go to church, it may be too loud, too many people, too many sounds, too many
Mm,
people that say nice things but don't really understand below the surface what's really happening. So
right.
it's one way it impacts people, but another way is they can get very like kicked out of what's called their window of tolerance. So the window is like a calm, regulated mind and body, and down here is where we're like paralyzed, collapsed, severe fatigue, and then we have all the adrenal fatigue and brain
Mm,
fog stuff that happens. And then there's the top where it's high anxiety, intrusions in their mind, flashbacks, high anger and energy, just this. I have all this and so they lash out or they may say, I can't handle this emotion. I've got to go use, I've got to go cut. So it is a real battleground. And what's also challenging is fighting a real stigma of therapy and what it is and what it means, because there is some real bad therapy. And so people have experienced it where there is an attunement with the therapist or the tools are actually not there to support them, or it's not founded on a basis of safety and love. Like that does happen. And
yeah.
so there's this stigma that like, oh, like I don't want to do that. And then also there can be a mismatch in the whole process. I work with a lot of marginalized communities where there's a higher stigma. So, like veterans, first responders, natives, high risk teenagers. And to them, they're like, I'm going to sit in an office with a lady in a nice suit and she's going to tell me how to live my life. Like, no, thank you. Like, no, thank you. I don't even want to talk about what I've been through, let alone have some lady try and tell me how I should think. And so I've found that there's unique ways that they can actually feel safe and process. One of the things I did most often with teenagers is we would take walks in their community. I love to play catch. It's a really good co-regulation technique. So we go to a park and we'd play catch and talk, or we'd walk and talk, or we'd play and talk. And it works really well for them. And then there's also individuals that express themselves through art or through music. It's a way for them to really capture their inner world. And so we lead with that. And then for other communities, it is actually getting outdoors and not focusing on themselves. And that's where
Mm,
equine therapy came in, where you could get a group of 10 people together in a therapy room. And over time, we develop a strong relationship and cohesion as a group and safety among each other. But when you get around a horse that's hurting and you're outdoors and you're helping this horse that has a story, it brings everything up and already creates safety. And so there were times where I would just I'd watch these groups that wouldn't normally want to even talk about what's going on in them, just floodgates and share all the things. And so I went, oh, I gotta incorporate so much more of this. One, it feels good for me. Like
Hmm.
nature regulates me. It's a great regulator for all of us. Like our feet are meant to be on the ground and the air in our lungs and the trees on our back.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So powerful.
Yeah.
What God has given you to give to people is definitely a gift. And I'm definitely going to say, take that a step further and say, you are a powerhouse in what you do. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I love that. I love that. And it's such a unique approach as well, using things like playing basketball or playing catch or music or art and those things, using those as a way of, I mean, one of the thoughts that was coming to my mind as you were sharing that story is I almost saw those things, so those activities, as distractions from their own mind,
Yeah.
allowing them to then open up and share what they really are feeling. Because
Yeah.
I think once you get them, it's kind of the same way of somebody that's got a wound and you're trying to fix that wound. In order to fix that wound, let's take a wounded animal. In order to fix that wound, you at sometimes the situation is so severe that you have to distract that person or animal or whatever it is. You have to distract them from the wound so that you can then repair the wound and
Yes.
help them. So in a sense, that's pretty much what you're doing with using their love of catch, activity, music, art. You're using that as their love and as a distraction to help them to open up. I love that.
Yes, you nailed it. You nailed it. And there's brain science to back that up. At first I didn't know that. I just knew, wait, this is the language they speak in, and I speak that language. So like we need to just follow that. And then when I started to learn about the brain, I went, oh, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, so this is like a very simple version. I'm not a neuroscientist, but like, okay, here's the brain, right? Okay, so like this is the lower parts of the brain that were first designed or kind of came into being. And then this is the front. So prefrontal cortex right here, it's our thinking brain. It's the one that does abstract stuff. Here, like underneath that is our limbic system. So that's emotions, that deeper level of how we're feeling and what's going on underneath the surface. And then back here is just survival. My heart rate, hunger, thirst, sleep, safety. And what happens when people are triggered or traumatized, they flip their lid. That's where it comes from. This prefrontal cortex goes offline. It's literally like a computer cord is unplugged out of the wall. And so when we're processing traumas, if we only stay here, we're just on a loop. We're just on a thought loop. And when trauma is so down deep, I can't just tell someone, well, just hope for a better future. They're going to want to punch me in the face, right? Because like their brain knows, like, please don't tell me that. So we've got to be able to bypass some of this, what's on a loop, to be able to get to the actual wounds in the core, in the body, and in the brain. So one of the places we hit is the limbic system, the amygdala, the hippocampus. Amygdala is like your smoke detector system. It's the one that is always like sending out signals of like, that's not safe. Ooh, the stove's on, don't touch it. Oh, there's a car coming really fast, slow down. And a person that's been traumatized or chronic exposure to trauma, it's more open. It actually is larger in a lot of people with brain scans. And so to them, they're hyper vigilant and
Mm.
they're very on edge because that part of the brain has had so much use of trying to decide what's safe and what's not. And then the hippocampus is the memory storage. And for people chronically traumatized, it actually can get smaller. Like the
Wow.
brain actually responds to stress. It's kind of like when poison food like disrupts our body, like stress to the brain, chronic exposure of it actually deteriorates certain things and expands certain things. And then there isn't balance anymore. So we get to the amygdala and the hippocampus. And so some of the therapies that I offer and other therapists offer, it actually allows that part to cool down or open up and process. It allows the body, rather than being like braced, if you start to just people watch their posture. Some walk like this. You wonder why. Some walk like this. You wonder why. Because the body, it remembers and it follows suit with all these subscripts and then the top script. And so, yes, we've got to get under the surface. We can't necessarily just talk our way through it. Now, the talking is important because we can be honest with each other. We can give soothing words. The Bible says that words can be so soothing like honey. And so words
Mhm.
matter and talking matters. But when we're really hitting core wound stuff and trauma, we got to get below the surface. And those very basic things of regulating with another human lets us do that.
100%, 100%. Now,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. First of all, I want to speak to the fact that I love how you explained all that. I'm a
Oh,
person that I don't like a lot of technical words. I
yeah.
don't like a lot of, like high sophisticated words and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I am a person that if I run across an article that's like that, not, through the research I'm doing and they're using a lot of big crazy words, I'm the person that will literally sit there and go, "Can I get the English version of this, please?"
Yes.
It's like it's crazy. So I really appreciate the fact that you really broke it down into a bite-sized, understandable aspect of it. So I love that. It's explaining the different parts of the brain and different things like that. I
Yeah.
absolutely love that, keeping it simple.
Yeah.
The other thing that I want to speak to, and I want to be careful with this conversation, not because I'm afraid of sharing this stuff, but just because I know YouTube is very, very picky about
Yeah.
usage of certain words. So
Yeah.
if the conversation goes that direction, use the word jab is what I'm going to say. Do not use the actual V word.
Okay.
So, and I know you're picking up on what I'm throwing out here. So,
Yes.
it's interesting. I wonder how many trauma students you came across during the scamdemic of 2020 and the lockdowns of 2020 and all the chaos that happened, all the unnecessary chaos that happened in 2020. And audience, I what I'm gonna say here is if you're kind of sitting back like, okay, what did he just say? Why is he, approaching it that way? That it was real and whatever and da 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 da. I'm just simply gonna encourage you to step out of the mainstream arena as far as the news you're watching and the different things like that. And I'm going to encourage you to go look at different sources that maybe you can find on Rumble, on BitChute, on Telegram, and start opening up your eyes. Because what happened in 2020 was not a pandemic. It was a scamdemic. It was a plandemic. It was all the things that fall in line with those two words that I just said. And it caused it caused unnecessary trauma in people. It caused mass suicides in people. Oh my gosh. There was so much damage that was caused by that. And I'm just kind of curious of the people that came across your path that you had to help through some of that. What are some of the things you encouraged them with? Because that's one of the thoughts that came to my mind as you were explaining the brain and how, trauma and fear works and everything. I was like going, oh my gosh, the scamdemic, what were some of the things that you had to deal with through all of that and helping people through that and actually bringing light to what truly was the truth.
Yeah, it's such a significant time in everybody's life and my life. So my tone changes because I look back on that time and oh my goodness, it was traumatizing for myself and the people I was serving. So for me, like God bless the fact that I kept a job. Like, I'm so thankful for that. Like, I actually had an income and an ability to serve, but I didn't have a break. Like, I was a frontline worker helping people with their mental health
Mm.
prior and during and after. And it's not stopped. Like, I've not had okay, we're done now. And the effects, it's kind of what they call like the silver tsunami for like the boomer generation as they're getting older and how it's going to impact the system. There's a legitimate tsunami coming for people that are coming out of a shock response to what happened and actually going, oh my God, oh my God, like this is what happened in my life and to the people I love. And so I know some people that I've served that they experienced like 30 different suicides. It was like funeral after funeral after funeral after funeral. Because when we rip connection from people, people are free floating in space. And we're
Mm.
also not tethered to the earth anymore because we're wearing rubber-soled shoes. And I could talk about that, but like we're
Yes.
so disconnected at a biological level. We're biological beings that it just put so much pressure on people. The levee broke for a lot of people. Like they already were going to combust, and then it destroyed. And at the time, I was working with high-risk teenagers in South Phoenix, in person and going in the home and running groups. And then we were all sent to work from home. So I personally started to withdraw from human contact. And it's also when I really started to understand workaholism in my own life and like the biological, I got to keep moving, moving, moving. So it was a blessing and it was a very painful process personally. But I watched teenagers that they didn't have a safe environment at home to begin with, be
Mm.
stuck in their home, and then not have a private space for therapy. Like, I can't tell you how many kids are like, my parents in the other room, I can't actually speak out loud. So we're going to have to type chat our way through a therapy session. And I did that for a lot of people consistently, like every week. And then there's others where, again, this kind of virtual conversation, it just did not resonate with their mind and their way of learning. And so they catapulted out of the mental health system because you couldn't access any in-person therapy. And so that put even more people at risk that had finally got connected to a therapist or an agency where they felt safe. And for others, I mean, it destroyed routine 100% for everybody, but teenagers where they're day in, day out, their one given is wake up, go to school, spend time at school, come home, and then whatever my evening is. That
Yeah.
was so turned around that I watched teenagers flip upside down, that they're now in these stressful environments with families. Their parents are stressed out. And so I watched runaways increase. I watched drug abuse increase. And some of these teenagers, I still know that they've not recovered. Their life is forever different, like forever different. And now they're navigating individual traumas that happened then. And then the collective trauma of, we were told things aren't safe. People aren't safe. Going outside isn't safe. And so imagine what that does to someone already vulnerable to post-traumatic stress disorder. Now they're going, if I even breathe, I'm not safe. If I don't wash my hands 20 times a day, I'm not safe. And oh my goodness, it's like the enemy preys on fear, right? Like
Yes.
God is not fear. Now he does say in scripture, come with fear and trembling, but it isn't what we think. It's a reverence and an honor of God and knowing that he really has the power over anyone and anything. Like right now, Ken, if he wanted, he could take the breath out of my lungs and I could drop dead right now. And so I have respect and awe of that and not fear of like, oh, I'm going to die right now. It's different. He doesn't use fear to hijack us. Now, some religions that identify Christ as their savior will use fear to draw people to Jesus, but that I digress. But there was so much happening then and now that's all based on fear. And then you add the election time then as well. I was running a teen group and a lot of the people, like, you may be listening to this and going, well, teenagers are kind of dumb. And especially this generation. Well, I will tell you, they said some of the most wise things I had ever heard. And it was me and my lead at the time in what was called emotions group and a couple young men and women. And they came in and they're like, I don't know what to believe. I don't know what's safe. Like my friend if they were 18, would vote here and I would vote here and they're against this. And oh my God, like, are they even my friend anymore? Is anybody safe? And so we would
Right.
process this huge level of fear. And yeah, it's had reverberations forever and until this day.
Yes. 100%.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, a couple of things I'm going to drop here before we start wrapping up.
No.
A couple of things I'm going to drop for the audience. Just some things to think about, you guys. So before I make my drop, so that I'm looking at my notebook here. Um, I'm going to say this. Summer of 2020, not only was that the summer where I had, the whole scamdemic, it was actually a needed interruption in my life. And it was actually the birth of my business. It was the birth of my brand. It was also the time where, thanks to a good friend of mine, I took my red pill. If you don't know what I mean by that, those of you who are listening, go watch the first movie of the Matrix series, the very first one. You will then understand what I mean by red pill. And then you will start to go, So I actually thrived summer of 2020, because it was just a time where God really awoken me to a lot of different things. And that is when I also, through a lot of deep dives, a lot of rabbit trails, I began to really, find my niche in the industry. And, my passion now is to expose the lies of the health and wellness industry and to bring people the truth on what really is going on, what they need to do. So it's just interesting. So a couple of things that I want to drop for the audience here, just things to think about. So number one, go research Operation Mockingbird. Go research that. Look it up on Rumble. Don't look it up on Google. Look up on Rumble. Also, go research something that's called Event 201. You might actually make some interesting discoveries around that. Very interesting discoveries. And lastly, I'm going to ask the question here. So, why 6 feet? Why was it 6 feet apart for us? Why were we told 6 feet? If this virus was so deadly and so dangerous, why only 6 feet? Did you ever really consider why? Why just 6 feet? Is there any scientific proof that 6 feet apart was actually the safe distance? Why not 10 feet? Why not 20 feet? To me, it would seem 10 to 20 feet would be more effective, right? Why six? I really want you to really think about that. Why 6 feet apart? Why that particular number? Now, what's interesting is I'm actually going to tell you why 6 feet. 6 feet apart is in correlation to a satanic ritual. So, distancing 6 feet apart, masking up, ritual washings, all of that was by design for you to then unknowingly participate in that kind of thing. So it's just something I'm throwing out there for you guys to think about. Why 6 feet? And the other thing I'll hit is the masks. And I'll just simply say this. If you could still smell things through your mask, it's not working. I'm just gonna say that. All right, I'm off my bandwagon with that.
Okay.
It's just some things that I just want
Yes.
to throw out to you as an audience listening to this. Just some things I just want you to think about. You may agree with me, you may not agree with me. You may make some aha moments, you may not. And that's up to you. But
Yeah.
I
Here's
am
what I
just
appreciate about you, Ken. I appreciate how you on the table, that is like our conversation with the people that are listening, with you and you and you and you, you're saying, take a look at this, take a look at this, take a look at this, take a look at this. I've looked at these. Things make sense. like just take a look. And I appreciate that so much because you're bringing your own experience and saying, hey, there's more to what's happening. And I
Yes.
would love for other people to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's what we're here for. We're here to help people to kind of, in a sense, it's a word that's being thrown around a lot lately, but we're here to help people start waking up to the real reality, not the one that the Mockingbird mainstream media has spoon fed you. Um, so just yeah, take a look at those alternate sources. So with that, we really do need to wrap up. So Kaleigh, how can people get in touch with you? What is the best way that people can get in touch with you? Are
Yeah. I mean, there's two ways. There's through email and there's through text. I tend to check my text messages first above anything else. And then I always ask for grace because I no longer am a workaholic. So I don't have this, I'm going to push myself to answer in 24 hours because sometimes that's unrealistic. A girl's got to sleep and eat and spend time with her family. But please shoot me an email, shoot me a text message. Um, I don't know if it'll be linked, but I can just share it. So get a pen and paper or your phone or whatever if it's something you want to explore more. But
it will
so
be
for
it
that,
will yeah, it will be in the description below in the
perfect.
description. So your email will
Yay.
be in there, your phone number will be in there, but you can go ahead and share it for those that are
Okay.
listening.
Perfect. I'm like, if auto captions are on and they get it wrong, guys, look down below to confirm. But it's
Yes.
K as in Kaleigh at Shine His, so his, right? Light LLC.com. So K at Shine His Light LLC.com. That's my email. And then my phone number 480-414-3916. And outside of that, I am so grateful to get to fellowship today, talk about Jesus, talk about healing, talk about truth, and just walk hand in hand while we welcome others into it. Thank you, Ken.
You're welcome. It's been amazing having you on the show today. It's been so amazing. And lastly, before I get into things that I want to announce and things about me here, do you have a favorite quote or model that you would like to share?
I do, and everybody's probably expecting what it's going to be. It is a piece of scripture, and it's my life verse, 100%. There's different versions of it, so sometimes I might miss a word or two. Guys, this is not me trying to like create my own Bible. This is just sometimes I forget words. But it's Psalm 82, 3 through 4. So write that down, Psalm 82, 3 through 4. And it's defend the cause of the weak and fatherless, uphold the rights of the poor and oppressed, deliver them from evil, and rescue them from evil and deliver them from the hand of the wicked. And there's so many people that are hurting and suffering, and so we're called to not forget our brothers and sisters. So there's a lot of ways to support that. If you're not a frontline worker and you want to connect with me and support the efforts, send me a message.
Hmm.
But otherwise, you could do this work with the loved ones in your life. You can show up in truth and you can show up in love and you could show up in taking good care of yourself too.
I love that. I love that. That is so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing that. All right, guys. So I've dropped many hints on today's show and today's interview about some of the stuff I do. So I want to just take a second and dive just a little bit deeper into that. And then also, I've got an announcement because something really cool is going on right now. So I have lost 62 and a half pounds and I've been able to keep it off for 6+ years now, all without a diet and all being sustainable. Don't even think about it. It's just who I am now. I am unapologetically faith-based weight loss coach. I empower each and every one of my clients to master their weight and health goals through a 7-part framework and applying Christian principles that then ignites them to achieve mastery in sustainably keeping the weight off for life, like I have, all without a diet, which is interesting. Nowadays, everybody is going to one diet to another diet to another diet, and not very many people can keep the weight off once they've lost it. Well, that's what I teach you how to do. And right now, I have got a special mini boot camp that is running. And I've had a number of people come through this boot camp and come out the other end very, very much empowered and ready to hit things head on. Kind of what I mean by that, let me give you an example. One of the clients that came through my boot camp on her last session with me, she said to me, "Now I'm excited to go to the grocery store." And it really caused me to sit back and go, "What? I mean, I don't even like going to the grocery store." And Lord have mercy if you're the person in front of me with a shopping cart and you're moving like a snail, because I just want to get out of there. Um, I don't even like going to the grocery store, and I know all the things, but she was empowered enough to say that statement to me. I am excited to go to the grocery store. This is some of the stuff that's coming out of my boot camp. So I'm giving away my 3 secrets to losing that last 20 pounds, to sustainably keeping the weight off once you've lost it, to break those sugar addictions, to break the hunger issues that you may have. You're going to be equipped with an empowered mindset shift. Number one. Number two, you're going to be equipped to spot the food industry lies and avoid the common pitfalls. And number three, you are going to be equipped to see past the marketing deceptions and make more informed choices with your food. You could be out there making all the heartfelt choices and really, really putting your heart and effort into making healthier choices. But on the back end, the scale may not be moving. You might be having some complications here and there. And really, what's happening is you're buying into the marketing deception that these companies use on their packaging, and you don't even know it. And most of the time, it's just subconscious because you're in the store, you want to get in there, get your stuff, and get out. Well, I help you to get past all that and empower you. In just 2.5 weeks of a span, this also includes in-depth booklets, and it also and it's 3 one-on-one sessions with me. So it's not group. It's one-on-one sessions with me. It's flexible to your schedule. We schedule the appointments out according to your schedule and all of that. You cannot lose. Well, you can lose that last 20 pounds, but you've got everything to gain. Join my boot camp. The link to it below is in the description as well. Join my boot camp. You guys, it's only $75. Honestly, if $75 is an investment for you, I think you need to prioritize some things, because for this $75, you're going to get a bunch of, yeah, you're going to walk out of this boot camp standing on such a solid ground. You'll never be moved by the industry ever again. You'll never be moved by the fads or all the other junk that the industry throws at you ever again. All for $75. So the link is below in the description. Click and join the boot camp. And for today's quote from me, I'm going to share one of my most common and favorite quotes that I love to share. And it's from a hero of mine. And it's treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. Treat the word impossible as nothing more than motivation. You can stand on your ground. You can achieve so many things in your life through Christ and through his power and all the things. Treat that word impossible as nothing more than motivation. That is by Donald J. Trump. So with that, you guys, thank you so much, Kaleigh, for joining me today on this interview. It's been a pleasure having you. It's been a pleasure opening up the space to you to be able to share all the things. Do you have any last words you want to share before we close things out today?
Love God, love people. Love God, love people.
And love people more than the information you're bringing to people.
That's
Such a
right, Ken.
yes, yes. All right, you guys have a great rest of your day or evening, depending on where you are in the world and when you are actually listening to this. I will talk to you on the next expert interview with Ken. Talk to you guys later.